You know, the old song goes that the lion sleeps tonight in the jungle, in the jungle. But back in 1953, the lion was roaring in the NFL, and it was playing against a very good team in the championship as the Detroit Lions and the Cleveland Browns squared off again. Randy Snow from the world of football joins us to tell us all about the 1953 season and the Detroit Lions. It's all coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And it's championship year. We're covering all the pre-Super Bowl NFL championship games from 1933 all the way to 1965. And we are at the year of 1953 tonight, and we have a returning guest. You might remember from last week and a couple other episodes before. Randy Snow from the world of football Kalamazoo is with us. Randy, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Thanks for inviting me, Darren. I've learned a lot doing these things. So you're really challenging me to come up with a lot of facts on my own team. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and folks, I think we just had a spoiler alert. What team won the championship in 1953? If you looked over Randy's shoulders when he's speaking, so yeah,
Hmm.
it's kind of interesting. You probably knew just having Randy on that Randy is tremendous fan with his son Adam of the Detroit Lions, and their podcast is not just about that; it's about other things too. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your podcast for those that have not heard before.
Well, Adam and my son, do a podcast called This Week in the World of Football, and we record it here in Kalamazoo, and we talk all things football from the NFL to college football to the Canadian Football League and arena football and indoor football, you name it. If it's out there in the football world, we talk about it, hence the name. And we've been doing it now almost 8 years. We're coming up on 400 episodes in another month, and this August we'll have our eighth anniversary. So, been doing it
Wow.
a long time, and one of these days we're going to get it right.
No, congrats on that. That's quite a bit of episodes and years running. That is
Yeah.
tremendous. And folks, it is a great way to exercise your football brain because they really extend the boundaries of it's not just NFL and college football. It takes you to all the arenas and all the other different leagues too, as well. It gives
Yeah.
you a nice rounded look at football. So great job by you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Randy, what can you tell us about the 1953 NFL and the season that occurred that year?
Okay, well, just to recap from our last episode together, the Lions had defeated the Browns 17-7 in the 1952 championship game. So now it's 1953, and they're getting ready to take the field and defend their title in 1953. But before the season even began, the Lions played in the annual preseason game against a team of college all-stars on August 14th at Soldier Field. That's one of the perks of being the NFL champion. You got to play in the preseason college all-star game, and they beat the college all-stars by the score of 24-10 in front of a crowd at Soldier Field of, get this,
Ooh.
93,318 at Soldier Field. So they must have been packing them in anywhere they could to see that game.
They probably didn't have a regular season game or the title game that had that many people in it.
No,
That's a
but
preseason game. Wow.
yeah, but spoiler alert, they did play a regular season game against a comparable crowd, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. So the 1953 season, the Lions finished with a record of 10-2, and the Browns actually had a record of 11-1 by the end of the season. The Lions started out with a win over the Steelers, and then in week two they had a win over the Colts. Now these are not they are the Baltimore Colts of today, but that was the first year for the Baltimore Colts because they were a team that the year before it was the Dallas Texans, and they moved them to Baltimore because there had been a Baltimore Colts team that came from the AAFC, but they only lasted a year or two, and this year, 53, they moved the Dallas Texans to Baltimore and became the new Baltimore Colts, and that's the Colts that we have today. So they beat them in week two, and then they had some similar to what they did last year. They had a game against the 49ers and the Rams, and then they went on the road for the 49ers and the Rams. They did something similar the season before. And in the sixth game of the season, they were at the LA Rams, and that game had they had an attendance of 93,751 at the LA
Wow.
Coliseum. Now, late in that game, Rams and Bob Boyd took a swing at Lions defensive back Jim David. Well, David retaliated, and that's what the officials saw. So he got ejected from the game, and he spent the remainder of the game sitting on the bench. Didn't go to the locker room. He just had to stay on the bench the rest of the game. Many angry fans in the bleachers behind the Lions bench were yelling at him, saying that they were going to get David after the game. And he wore number 25. So the coaches and everybody got a little concerned that he had a target on his back from the angry fans there for taking a swing at one of their players. So Lions assistant coach George Wilson told the players to get David a different jersey, which they did on the sidelines. And they gathered around him and they quietly slipped a different jersey number on him so that after the game, he was able to walk to the locker room without anybody knowing who he was, because they were looking for number 25 and he had a different jersey number on. So he made it out of there in one piece. Thank goodness.
They didn't make somebody else change jerseys with them, so the
No.
other poor guy put the 25 on. He gets the eggs and everything thrown at him.
Yeah, that was under the new jersey. They just put the new jersey under his current 25 jersey, and so he was able to get out of there without getting attacked by the angry fans. But from there, the Lions went on a six game winning streak to finish the season. In week 8, the Lions were at the Packers, but head coach Buddy Parker missed that game because his father had passed away of a stroke. So, and this happened the Friday before the Sunday game. So he was not there for that one. But he was back the following week. The Lions beat the Packers on Thanksgiving Day, 34-15. And they ended the season with wins over the Bears at home and the Giants on the road. That gave them that 10-2 record. Their only 2 losses of the season came to the LA Rams twice. They lost to the Rams at home. They lost to the Rams in Los Angeles. So that was the only loss, the only team they lost to all season long. So now we talk about the NFL championship game, which was played in Detroit, Briggs Stadium. Back in those days, they only had the 2 conferences, so they alternated every year. One was going to be at the East Conference, and the next year was at the West Conference. So this was the year that Detroit got to host it. And this game was played on December 27th, 1953. It was a muddy day. Parts of the field were kind of frozen, and it was kind of slippery. It was a big muddy mess by the end. And the temperature was in the low 30s that day. You know, late December in Michigan, actually, that's pretty warm for a December day in Michigan, the low 30s. So the tickets for this game in Detroit ranged from $3 to $7, and people were parking around the stadium for $1. Okay.
You can't even buy a beer for that at a stadium.
Yeah. I went to the Lions playoff game year before last against the Rams, and if I could have got a ticket for $7 and parking for $1, I'd have thought I was in heaven. But man, it's not like that anymore.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, Cleveland was installed as a 6-point favorite in this game because they had the better record. So everybody thought that Cleveland was going to win this year. And then to start this game, get this, Bobby Lane actually kicked off to start the game. I don't remember Lane being much of a kicker. I know a lot of people did multiple jobs. They played offense, they played defense, they played special teams. I can't recall ever hearing Bobby Lane being a kicker. But he kicked off to start the 53 championship game. The Lions scored first. Doak Walker scored on a 1-yard run, and then he also kicked the extra point for a 7-0 lead in the first quarter. A fumble by Detroit at their own 6-yard line resulted in a turnover, which led to a field goal in the second quarter by Lou Groza of 13 yards, and so Detroit was still in the lead 7-3. Later in the second quarter, Doak Walker kicked a 23-yard field goal, and Detroit was up 10-3 at halftime. In the second quarter, however, Bobby Lane actually caught a 20-yard touchdown pass from Doak Walker, but it was nullified because at the time, a T formation quarterback was not eligible to catch a pass.
Mm.
So that resulted in a 15-yard penalty, and so instead of a touchdown, they wound up getting this Doak Walker field goal at the end of the second quarter.
There's
But
there's
Doak,
a coach that drew that one up. Didn't know the rule book
yeah,
very well, did he?
yeah. Well, I don't know if it was just one of those things where he couldn't find anybody open, so he just figured, well, I'll just throw it to Bobby Lane because he's wide open over there on the sideline. But yeah, the officials had at first they called it a touchdown, and then they all got together and they talked about it and they said, well, technically he's not supposed to do that, so they took it away. So whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, but that's what happened.
Now
Um,
see if I'm the coach of Detroit, I'm going to say, hey, wait a second. He's not our quarterback. He's our kicker. He started the game as a kicker. Don't you remember?
yeah, yeah, I don't know if kickers could catch passes, but they probably could. But in the first half, Doak Walker scored all of Detroit's 10 points. He had a touchdown, a point after, and he had a field goal. So he was responsible for all 10 points that they had in the first half. And Lou Groza actually missed a 51-yard field goal in the second quarter. So that could have been the difference in the game, that missed field goal. But, for those days, that's a pretty long field goal, even
Yeah.
for Lou the Toe Groza. That's,
I mean
you know,
that's long in today's modern game as a soccer style, but
right,
yeah, that's
right.
really long.
Yeah, I mean, he was a straight on kicker, but he's in the Hall of Fame now. But on that championship day, he couldn't make a 51-yard field goal, so
Mhm.
that kind of hurt the Browns a little bit. So moving on to the third quarter, Harry Jagade, I think is how you pronounce his name, had a 9-yard run for a touchdown, and Groza kicked the extra point. So in the third quarter, the score was tied 10-10. In the fourth quarter, Groza kicked two more field goals, a 15-yard field goal, which gave the Browns their first lead of the game at 13-10, and then later in the quarter, he kicked a 43-yard field goal with 4 minutes and 10 seconds left for a 16-10 game. Now, uh, the last score of the game came when Jim Doran uh, collected a 33-yard pass from Bobby Lane, and the extra point by Doak Walker made the game 17-16. And Jim Doran was filling in for the injured Leon Hart, who was injured early in the game for the Lions. Doran was mainly a defensive end, so they pulled him off the defense to play wide receiver, which, again, like I said, a lot of players in those days played both ways, and so he knew how to catch passes, but it wasn't his main job. But they threw him in because of Leon Hart's injury. And Doran caught that touchdown pass with 2 minutes and 8 seconds left in the game, and it was his only touchdown of the season. Can you believe that?
Wow.
He caught two other passes during that drive. I think he had like three receptions during that drive, which took him from like the 20-yard line to the end zone, and he had three big catches on that drive. So he had he came through for the Lions very well at the end of that game.
Yeah, have
Uh,
a whole career in your last 4 minutes of one game.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
The Lions intercepted Otto Graham on the ensuing drive, and so they were able to run out the clock and preserve that 1 point win. It was the second NFL title game ever played in Detroit, the first one being that one in 1953 that you and I talked about several weeks ago. But it would not be the last, and I'll just leave it at that for now. This was the third straight title game loss for the Browns, though. I mean, they were such a powerhouse. I think they had won five in a row going back to the AAFC, but as of this game, they had now lost three in a row. They lost to the Rams in 51 and the Lions in 52. Now the Lions in 53. So, uh, but they were still there every year. I mean, the Browns were a heck of a team back then. So it was really something that Detroit could beat them twice in consecutive seasons. The
Yeah,
attendance for this game in Detroit was 54,577.
yeah, they were probably disappointed with that after the 290,000 games they had. You know,
Yeah, well, but this was a home crowd, so they were all behind Detroit. There wasn't a hostile 93,000 sitting in the LA Coliseum telling Detroit how terrible they were and how they were going to beat them or whatever.
yeah, back then, well, I guess travel was a little bit more restricted than we have it today because Cleveland and Detroit, if by my calculation, they're less than 3 hours apart from each other, right? It's-
Yeah, I don't know if they took a train to Cleveland or Cleveland took a train to Detroit or if it was a bus or whatever. But for me to drive from Kalamazoo to Cleveland, that's about a 4-hour drive. So yeah, it's probably 3.5 hours by train, maybe. I don't know. I'm not much of a
yeah,
train person, but that's probably how they traveled back then.
yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, again, people aren't traveling to go to football games like they are today. It wasn't, especially the NFL wasn't as popular a sport back then. But
Right,
that's still a
right.
pretty good crowd back then for 54,000 for an NFL championship game.
Yeah.
I'm making slight of it because of the 90,000 at the two other games, but yeah, pretty interesting that they get a big crowd like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so looking at some of the stats from the championship game, Bobby Ling was 12 of 25 passing for 175 yards, or 179 yards, I'm sorry. He threw one touchdown. He had two interceptions and a fumble, and he also ran the ball for 44 yards. Jim Doran had four receptions in the game for 95 yards and that game-winning touchdown. Cloyce Box also had four receptions for 54 yards for Detroit. For the Browns, Otto Graham, get this, completed just 2 of 15 passes for 20 yards in that game. He had
Wow.
two interceptions and a fumble, and he ran 5 times for a grand total of 9 yards. So the Lions' defense really held him in check that day. That's so unusual for Otto Graham to only complete 2 passes in a
Yeah,
game.
that's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. That's like holding
Yes.
Tom Brady to two reception or
Yeah.
completions.
Yeah. A
Wow.
Hall of Famer, but that boy, they had his number that day.
I'll
And
bet.
then Harry Shigade, the running back for the Browns, he ran the ball 15 times for 102 yards and had a touchdown, and he had one reception for 18 yards. So yeah, it was just an incredible game. This was linebacker Joe Schmidt's rookie season for Detroit. He was a seventh round draft pick, and he wasn't happy about being drafted by Detroit. He was hoping to play for his hometown Pittsburgh Steelers because he
Well,
felt that
who wouldn't?
yeah. Well, even up to that time, I don't think the Steelers were very good,
No, they
but
weren't.
still, he wanted to play for his hometown team. And the reason he didn't want to go to Detroit is because he thought he'd have a pretty hard time breaking into their roster because they already had so many great players. I mean, they'd won the title the year before, and they were a good team, and so he thought, boy, I'm going to have a tough time as a rookie trying to get into to this team. But he eventually did. But he was offered $6,000 to sign with the CFL's Toronto Argonauts, and he seriously considered it because he really had his misgivings about going to Detroit. But it all worked out for the best because he came to Detroit, he signed a contract, and now he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Uh, so it's funny how things happen like that. You never know how things are going to turn out sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely. Wow, that is some great insight there on everything, including, Schmidt at the end. I didn't realize that about Schmidt, that he wanted to stay at home and play for the Steelers too,
Yeah.
but or the Argonauts offer.
Yeah.
So
Well, back in those days, the pay scale between the Canadian Football League and the NFL were pretty much comparable. I mean, a lot of times you could make more money going to Canada, and a lot of people did. But he thought about it. He considered it and decided. He took a little less than $6,000 to sign in Detroit, but I think he made the right decision after all.
yeah, you get the Pro Football Hall of Fame, maybe just a step above the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, a bit
Well,
more
I've
prestige.
been to both. They're both very good,
Right,
but yeah, the NFL one is much bigger than the Canadian Hall of Fame.
right. So yeah, hope maybe
Let's
someday we'll have members of both in both Halls of Fame, and it'll be
we
more of a
do
pro.
we do. Let's see, who's the Marv Levy. Marv Levy is there, and so is I believe
Bud Grant.
Bud Grant. Yes, and there's a third one. I forget who the third one is, but yeah, there are three people.
Warren Moon, I think, is he
Yes, yes, I believe you are right. Well, is Warren Moon in the NFL Hall of Fame?
I I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't know. Now I have to double check. I thought he was, but
Yeah,
I
but
could be
anyway,
wrong.
I know definitely Bud Grant and the Bills coach Marv Levy are definitely both in the Canadian Hall of Fame and the
And this
NFL
just
Hall of
in,
Fame.
he Warren Moon is in both. He's in the
Okay,
Canadian and the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
okay.
But
Yeah, I knew he was definitely in the Canadian one, but I couldn't remember if he was in the
we have
NFL or
our
not.
Pigskin Dispatch fact checkers here on the side,
Okay.
and
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, Adam's not here, so I can't ask him to check these things while I'm talking. So good for you.
yeah, I have to give him a dog bone now to.
Also, the Browns had a rookie that season by the name of Chuck Noll. He was played guard on that team, and he's more well known as the Steelers head coach that led him to 4 Super Bowls in the '70s, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Um,
Yeah.
the 1953 in 1953, the Lions defense accounted for 53 turnovers, the second
Mm.
most in the league behind those Baltimore Colts. While most NFL coaches drafted for offense back in those days, head coach Buddy Parker of the Lions was not afraid to move a good offensive player to defense because he knew that a good defense really helps your offense, and that was a lot of the success that they had in the '50s was the fact that they had some great players on defense. When everybody was stacking up on offensive players, he said, "You know, you're good on offense, but I need you to play defensive back instead of wide receiver more." And boy, that's a system that worked for Detroit for about a decade.
Yeah.
Uh,
Think about that for a second. I mean, I mean, would they play 12 regular season games and a championship?
yes.
53, that's, 4 turnovers a game, over 4 turnovers a game.
Hmm.
And that's tremendous. What defense in any era wouldn't want to have that? That's
Yeah.
a great stat.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, sports writers in Detroit were trying to come up with a catchy nickname for the defensive unit. They tried names like the Dirty Shirts and the Detroit Destroyers. Nothing really stuck. They finally settled on Chris's Crew, named after defensive back Jack Christensen, who's now in the Hall of Fame. They even tried to come up with a name for the defensive line, um, and some of them were referring to them as the Hunks of Granite, kind of like the blocks of granite, the 7 blocks of granite from Fordham, and that really didn't stick. But years later, the Lions' defensive line that featured Alex Karras, Roger Brown, Darius McCord, and Sam Williams became known as the Fearsome Foursome in the 1960s. And everybody thinks of the Fearsome Foursome as the Los Angeles Rams, but we had our own version of the Fearsome Foursome. We used the same name, but we had our own players, and that's a pretty good lineup right there. In fact, Roger Brown eventually left Detroit and went to Los Angeles when, oh gosh, I think Lamar Lundy, did he get hurt? I think Lamar Lundy got hurt.
That
I
could
can't
be.
remember exactly, but one of them got hurt, and so they brought in Roger Brown to play on their fearsome foursome. So he went from Detroit's fearsome foursome to the Rams' fearsome foursome.
Well,
So
maybe
that's
Roger
pretty
packed up
cool.
that name in Detroit and took it with him out to LA and say, "Hey, I'm here now. Now we're the fearsome foursome."
I think they came up with the names about the same time,
Did they?
but
Okay.
I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
Now now there were 16 future Hall of Famers that played in this game. There were 7 players for Detroit and 9 for the Browns. 10 if you count Paul Brown, being in the Hall of Fame also. Otto Graham was named the MVP by the Associated Press that year prior to the championship game, and that's probably why they were installed as a 6-point favorite to win the game. Now, for winning the game, the Lions received $1,000 each, as well as a percentage of the gate, and the Browns players only received a percentage of the gate from the game. So, $1,000 I guess, was a pretty good sum back in 1953. So, now, signing bonuses are in the millions, but you win it all and you get an extra $1,000.
You can't even buy an NFL championship game ticket for $1,000,
Well, you can't even buy a seat to an NFL game sometimes for a
Right.
thousand dollars,
Right.
depending on when and where the game is being played.
How
So,
things have changed.
yeah. So this was the second straight title game for the Lions, and the second straight year that a Lions player's wife gave birth on game day. This is pretty ironic. In 1952, and Dorn Dibble's wife Betty gave birth to a baby girl on the day of the championship game. And in 1953, Detroit's defensive tackle Thurman McGraw's wife, Beryl, Berryl is how she spelled her name. But she gave birth to the couple's second son. So just a little ironic there, but
Huh.
that 2 championship games, 2 babies born to Lions players at the same time.
Well, I'm surprised Coach Parker didn't have a curfew like 9 months earlier to say, "Hey, nobody's allowed to be with their wife here.
Yeah,
No
well,
distractions."
yeah, that's probably something that Paul Brown would have done. I think he had a rule about not uh, being friendly with your wife a few days before each game or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent. What was it, the Italian soccer team in one of the Olympics or World Cups or something a few years ago? They weren't allowed to be with their spouses or girlfriends for
Mm,
like a month before the FIFA World
wow.
Cup or whatever it was.
Well, I guess that was motivation for them to win and go home.
Right, right. Or lose and go home.
Well, that's all the stuff I've got on this game.
No, that is tremendous, Randy. That's a great game. I mean, a 17 to 16 game. Uh, home field win. The crowd had to be going crazy. Had to be a little nervous at the end.
Yeah,
But finish it off with an interception of Otto Graham and holding them to just two completions. That's still unbelievable. And he played the whole game too. That's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, there's a great video, a recap on YouTube about the whole game. You can see all the plays and hear all these stories. That was really good, and it's nice to see these games, even if they are in black and white. It's still fun to actually see the uniforms, the muddy field, the fans in the stands, and all that. So, yeah, go check that out on YouTube.
Yeah, I definitely will. And maybe we can put a link here in the show notes for folks to go over and check it out after they're done listening here and enjoy the game. Yeah,
Yeah,
great idea. Great idea.
yeah.
So what do you and Adam have cooking coming up here in the near future?
Well, like I said, we've got our 400th episode of our weekly podcast, and we really do this podcast every week. I think the first 4 years we never missed a single week of putting our podcast out. And the last couple of years we've taken some time off after the Super Bowl, maybe 3, 4, or 5 weeks, whatever, and before the indoor and arena seasons get into gear. So we have taken a few breaks. So yeah, it should be more than 400 episodes by now,
Hmm.
but we're fine with that. We need some time off after a Super Bowl to kind of decompress, and we were hoping that we'd be celebrating a Lions Super Bowl win this past year, and we were ready for a break to really catch our
Yeah,
breath after the season that they put together last year. But it just wasn't to be, but maybe this year. I mean, I've been
we're
a
close.
Lions fan for over 50 years now. Since 1975 is when I saw my first Lions game, and I'm telling you, it's so close we can almost reach out and touch it now. So I want to be able to retire my T-shirt that says "Just one championship before I die," and it's got a Super Bowl trophy on it. So we'll see if that happens this year. I've got a good feeling about this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, once your teams were out, a lot of people were rooting to see like a Buffalo Detroit Super Bowl
Yeah,
then somebody's going to get their first Super Bowl win,
yeah,
and that would have
yep,
been a fun Super Bowl too. I mean, it was fun.
yeah.
The other teams are playing, but I think that would be see somebody different for a while. No Kansas City, no New England. We want to see somebody different for a while.
Yeah. Well, there's only four teams that have never appeared in a Super Bowl: the Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Those are the only four teams that have never appeared in a Super Bowl. And well, I'm hoping one of those teams comes off that list this year, and I think you know which one it is.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess I don't know what your kind of vibe you're sending there, Randy, but but yeah, how ironic that the two teams that met, but three times in the
Yes,
50s for
4 times.
4 times in the 50s for a championship game,
Yeah,
haven't played in almost 60 times of the Super Bowl era, so
yeah,
championship.
yeah,
That's quite ironic.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a Browns Lions Super Bowl. That would be awesome. I think both cities would be down for that.
Yeah, that would be quite a Lake Erie fan fest there on
There you
the,
go.
the
Yeah.
west side of Lake Erie. So,
Yep.
but I think the team on the east side of Lake Erie would like to be in there too, like in Buffalo being in.
Well,
But
yeah, and you're right between those two cities, so you're
right,
you'd be
right,
right in the
yeah,
middle of it.
yeah, we get the radio waves from all three of them, so across the lake, bouncing all
Yeah,
over.
you'd see
So,
all the fans going either one way or the other.
yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah, tremendous. Well, Randy, we really appreciate you chiming in again and telling us about this great National Football League championship game and preserving the history. And what a great job you do on your podcast with Adam too. So we thank you for that and for sharing with us tonight.
Thanks, Darren. And like I said before, thank you for uh, pushing me to do this. Not pushing me, but encouraging me, and it's really helped me learn more about the championship games of my own team that I love that I didn't know before. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to research these things and present them to you.
Yeah, and your family is almost ready to pay the ransom, but I'm not quite ready to let you go yet. So we'll keep you in my basement a little bit longer.
You think you're going to want me to come back and talk again?
I think that might be in the future here, and we would love to have you and talk about another championship for Detroit. So stay tuned.
Okay, I'll keep the research going.
All right, thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Derek.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.